Well, hello everybody. How are you? I hope you are well. Yesterday was Sunday. It's not Sunday anymore. It's now Tuesday, April 7th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I am thrilled to be back. And I have not one, but two interviews, two celebrities, if you will. I have Bob Killian, who is a consultant. He was one of the first brand managers, just when brand management was really coming to the forefront. He's worked on the agency side. He's just published a book called Rebrand, and we're going to talk about what that means. And also Macy Gray. You see, I've kind of given up on Trevor Noah for a while. I mean, not that I'm not pursuing him. I am pursuing him on a daily basis. Stalking, I don't know what the word is, hounding, being persistent. Isn't that part of the message now, right? Isn't it about being persistent, showing determination, grit, the little guy, absolutely being able to say, kind of we're in it to win it, the leveling of playing fields. But I'm going to focus on my dear friend, Macy Gray, today. And yeah, we got a lot of stuff to get through. So hello to everybody. Hello to Joey DeMont. Good to have you back. And Bob said Trevor who. So I think Bob's maybe moved on as well. So that's a good thing, I suppose. All right. Well, I want to get into a whole bunch of things, but first of all, I hope you're having a good day. Yesterday was beautiful. It was about 60 degrees in Connecticut. I went for a beautiful run with my son, but he kind of left me in the dust as a 16-year-old would do. I posted on my Instagram this beautiful, there's a little trail that I like to go on, a little walk. And some of the neighbors had written all these beautiful messages of hope and encouragement and motivation. Go check out my Instagram, Jaffe Juice, and just see it. It was really, really beautiful, very inspiring. And today, both my wife and I are giving blood. We're donating actually plasma today. Part of, it's actually a study. It's a research study where they're going to look at our blood, at the plasma antibody level. My wife recovered, thankfully, from the COVID-19, from the coronavirus. I probably, I tested negative. So either I didn't have it at any point in time, or I did, and it went through me. I was asymptomatic, not really sure, but we're going to learn a lot. And so I'm kind of excited to have to go through that process. And if we can make a difference, I mean, that is exactly the point here at the end of the day. Interviews in April. Bob is my first. We're fully booked in April. I've just opened up some of the May booking slots. And if you're interested, and if you know someone who'd like to come on and be interviewed, just contact me. The whole idea here is, helping is the new selling. If I can help other people by bringing them on, by giving them some, visibility, some publicity, talking about, some of the beautiful things, amazing things they're doing, but more importantly, how can they help you guys? How can they share some of their knowledge and wisdom, some of the books that they've written, some of the speeches that they've given as well. I thought that was all, it is very important to do. Now, as always, we look at the numbers, and I'll just go through them very, very briefly. They were actually looking quite good until Johns Hopkins updated them a little bit. So, what I've been looking at now is you look at the absolute numbers, 1.3 million cases globally, 78,000 deaths, 292,000 recovered. But I've been trying to look at trends, right? And look at whether those numbers are increasing or not. Globally, now for the third day running, we've actually seen green, right? Which means less cases, new cases than the day before. That number is slightly up in terms of deaths, 5,600 deaths per day at the moment, and slightly less recovered. Let's look at the US, shall we? And what we see in the US actually is all red, even though there are some very encouraging signs clearly coming out of New York in particular, a flattening of the curve, but definitely an increase in the number of cases, something that I think is kind of always concerning. 1,495 deaths over the past 24 hours or so, and a reduction in recovered. But as you saw from yesterday's show, that may not always necessarily be a true or accurate representation. It's really based on tracking and recording and methodology, et cetera, et cetera. Birthdays, let's just go through our birthdays. A whole bunch of them. We've got Sean Melnick, Andre Barnard, Brian Teeter, Mark Samuels, Benoit, David Tate and Kim Meissen, Aubrey Miller, Michelle, Karen, Chris, and then some celebrities as well. Why not? You know, Francis Ford Coppola, I'm sure he is working already on COVID-19, the movie, Russell Crowe and Jackie Chan. And, you know, we are talking about celebrities, and we are talking about famous people. You're famous, I'm famous, we're all famous. But certainly, you know, I wanted to go to Macy Gray. I mean, you know, why not? You know, why not? Wouldn't we want to kind of see and talk to her a little bit? And actually, yeah, let's do that. You know, why am I taking so much time? Let's move over.
Hello, everybody on CoronaTV. This is Macy Gray at Jaffe Juice. Just hit me up, and he was like, you know, won't you come on my TV channel and say something to everybody out there? And I know, you know, you've heard all the encouraging words. You can do it. We have to do this. We're all in this together. Blah, blah, blah. But really, underneath all that, you really just want to get the fuck out of the house. You want to fucking go to your favorite restaurant. You even want to go back to work. You can't even wait till they send your kids back to school. The whole point of school, yes, it's nice that they learn something, but it's for you to get away from your kids for a few hours. What is this bullshit? Anyway, hello everybody out there. God bless you like crazy. I got a joke for you. Okay, so a pony walks into a bar, and the bartender says, what do you have? And the pony says, oh, and then the bartender says, what? And then the pony says, I'm sorry, I'm just a little horse. I know you're cracking up. You can't stop laughing. All right, y'all, so be awesome, be patient, and be smart, be healthy, be amazing. Hope I run into you one day.
And that's Macy Gray. Well, she wasn't on live, but you know, I said she'd be on, and she was on. I hope you enjoyed that. Paula Killian, she must be related to Bob. Love your glasses. I don't know whether she's referring to Macy or mine. I'm assuming Macy. And Howard Cohen said, why can't you get Jurgen Klopp? You know, listen, if he wants to come on, he can come on. I'm not going to discriminate at all. So thank you, Macy. I probably should have said that might not have been safe for work, except there really is no work at the moment anyway, or at least you're not working in an office in a cubicle. So hopefully your kids weren't around as well. You know, I just want to spend time maybe just talking about one item essentially, and we'll go back to you know, this idea of I was talking to Bob in the virtual green room, and we're talking about the fact that right now the mantra is this idea that helping is the new selling. Well, if helping is the new selling, selling is not the new helping. This is a piece of creative, an ad for at&t that I've just been seeing. You know, I watch CNN all the time for news. I don't watch anything else anymore. There's no live sport, etc. And I must have seen this ad 20, 30, 40 times. Let me play it for you, and then, you know, I'm going to offer some commentary on it, a little bit of criticism, to be quite honest with you.
These days, it's anything but business as usual. That's why working together is more important than ever. at&t is committed to keeping you connected so you can keep your patients cared for, your customers served, your students inspired, and your employees closer than ever. Our network is resilient, Our people are strong. Our job is to keep your business connected. It's what we've always done. It's what we'll always do.
So I don't know about you, but I watched that and there's just an empty feeling as well. It feels like AT&T is talking about themselves. It feels like it's a chest beating. I mean, it's great that they're talking about their employees. It's great that they're talking about, what they're doing for us. But you know what? Talk is cheap. Tell me what you're doing for me. Show me what you're doing for me. Are you helping me pay my bills? Are you giving me 3 months grace? Are you giving me unlimited data? Are you making sure that my data connection is not being throttled? Show me what you're doing for me. I want to see AT&T. And all I'm thinking, the back of my mind the whole time, is what would happen if they took all of that money that they're spending on advertising right now, telling us how great they are and what a great job they're doing and how they're there for us. What if they put that into or invested that into worthy causes right now? And by the way, a worthy cause doesn't necessarily have to be charity. A worthy cause doesn't necessarily have to be production of or funding of or distribution of PPE. A worthy cause could also be customers that are destitute, customers that are desperate, customers right now that desperately need to figure out how to make ends meet. And let's just be clear about one thing as well. Right now, there is no more kind of essential service than having data, than having a connection, than being able to talk on the phone, to WhatsApp, to use Facebook, to connect to Zoom for work purposes or education purposes, or be able to stream Netflix. So, I want to spend this time talking about what companies are doing and great examples, inspirational examples of what brands are doing. But at the same time, I also do want to be able to call out and criticize companies that I think are not doing enough, that could be doing more. You don't need the government to have to enact the Defense Production Act for you to have to get, to work, to get into act, to get, cracking, to be able to make a difference. Now is the time to do it. And so I just wanted to share that with you today, and obviously hear what you guys have to think and what you have to say about that. And someone who probably has an idea about that piece of creative is my guest, is Bob Killian. And Bob isn't coming in through video like Macy did. Bob is actually here with me right now. So let me bring him in. Mr. Bob Killian, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Absolutely.
I don't want to just put you on the spot straight away, but you can disagree with me or agree with me. What did you think about that AT&T spot and what I had to say about it?
I totally agree with you that it felt heartless. It felt self-serving and really wasn't on brand for AT&T even. Compare that. I was just looking this morning on Twitter. There was a spot from Dove Canada, Dove, health and beauty products, and they're all about real beauty. And what they show in the new spot is a series of faces of medical workers, nurses and techs and all that, as they come off their shift, and their faces are covered with blood, and their cheeks are lined with where their mask was all day, and they're scarred, and it's one face after another, and then finally it says, "Courage is beauty." Magnificent and absolutely on brand for Dove, who are very rule breaking and have been for quite some time. And what are just a perfect little statement. And then there's a note at the end that they're donating something or other to or cleaning products to healthcare workers in Canada. And it's just the sort of the emotional opposite of the AT&T sort of bloodless spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny how we're actually talking about blood, right? I mean, I'm donating blood today. Blood which is the Dove piece of creative, and Bloodless, Heartless, which is AT&T. You know, Jan just said this. He just kind of echoed that point as well. And yeah, I will definitely find that spot and play it for you. But you said something as well, Bob, which I think is so important, which is we need to see brands, you know, not just make promises but keep them, not just talk but actually act on that. And I think the perfect example of that, you know, for the most part, you know, is like, well, actually not the perfect example, but when you think about the reverse, the Gal Gadot, you know, celebrity, you know, failed attempt of being able to create some kind of a meme or a theme or an anthem of them singing Imagine, you know, and you know, without makeup on and crudely shot on the iPhone. The whole idea of saying, hey, listen, look how raw we are, look how human we are. But there are celebrities right now with so much money and so much cushion. What was missing from that spot is the same thing, the ability to say, and that's why each of us have donated $50,000 towards blah, blah, blah. Talk is cheap, you know, at the end of the day. And, you know, and so I'm glad we got into that. But now I have to like ask you this question. It's been on my mind now for a while, which is your book just launched. Just launched right now. I mean, do talk about bad timing. Like, I mean, this must be the worst time in the world. Oops, I just took you off there. This must be the worst time in the world to launch a book, surely, right?
Yes and no, because the book will be around for a while when things are not quite as distracting and urgent. But it is also a time when people who are facing, you know, those who are not facing a medical crisis, but who are facing a business crisis, need to rethink and potentially rebrand what their companies are, and in response to conditions and just to changing circumstances. And they may be sitting at home, and this is a really good time for them to read a book. So it's where there's a lot of noise right now, so it's a difficult time to launch anything new. But it is also a time when it might be a very, very timely message as well.
Yeah, well, that was a little bit of a softball for you, my friend, because of course you didn't plan on launching the book, but now people have this opportunity, right? They're staying at home. You know, some of them are brand managers working on brands and really thinking about. I almost think that the concept of rebranding itself has changed, because, you know, in the past, the rebrand itself, it was very superficial. It was design based, right? It was messaging based. Now it feels like we need to rebrand the actual purpose and mission of the business, rebrand, you know, the actual business model. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, some people are doing it very well, and so rebrand doesn't always mean a total rebrand or a total renaming and you know, major surgery. Sometimes it is just a question of, you're doing most things right. Let's, you know, tweak the messaging, or let's find a, you know, segments that we've ignored, which is always a problem with big brands. Or don't fall asleep. And this is a lot of small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses, who are doing okay and are growing by 3% a year and all that. And then suddenly they look, and there's a competitor who's growing, who's doubled in size and is close on their heels. And it's like a wake-up call. Well, you know, the range of need varies all over the place. And sometimes, you know, one of the things we do in the book is we put in a bunch of quizzes that you self-evaluate your organization. They aren't all companies. Some of them are charities or colleges or, you know, political campaigns, that sort of thing. There's a series of quizzes where you evaluate strengths and weaknesses and, you know, purposes and messaging and all those things. And you accumulate scores. And at the end of the book, there's a, you know, here's total up the scores, and here's how that brand stacks up, and exactly how much help do you need. And that ranges from, hey, we're doing just fine. You know, we've thought of all these problems, we're on it, or all the way to, geez, we need a total makeover, you know. So it's anywhere in between.
Well, I mean, you know, the subhead of your book is the how-to guide for the Darwinian survival, you know, of your company, candidate, college, cause, and career. The 5 C's. I love them. And it's very alliterative at the end of the day, but Darwinian, you know, survival of the fittest, evolution, the ability to adapt or die. Now more than ever, companies are faced with their own demise and their extinction. You know, the quote that I always use the whole time, it is not the strongest of species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but rather the one that is the most adaptable to change. So the only constant is change right now. And certainly I would argue that any brand right now, they might have thought life was great before, but suddenly now they're faced with this seismic, cataclysmic change that is now business as usual.
Yes, and it's gone very deep, you know, over the last 20 years or so, because everything is so much more digital now, and companies resisted being digital, and they are resisting being, doing online as much as, you know, because hey, we're retail stores, we don't do online. And they're forced into it, and they're forced into those changes. But those changes have been coming a long time because buyer behavior has changed. And if you're running a political campaign, voter behavior has changed. And all of those things mean that if you don't adapt and you sit still and, you know, be static in your approach to your brand, you're likely to get very surprised in a negative sense, just because you have to adapt to those changes and make sure that you are not pursuing old media habits or the kinds of procedures that was, you know, this is the way grandfather did it, and therefore we continue. There is no perfect brand. Nobody does it perfectly. There's some who come pretty close, but everybody needs to, every 6 months minimum, sit down and say, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What are our competitors doing? Mm-hmm. Let's pay attention to what, you know, take a look at your 3 biggest competitors and look at their website. Read all the way through it. What are they saying that we're not saying? What are they doing that we're not doing? And if there's something that they're not saying, maybe that's something we should be saying. So those kinds of self-examinations are really important. Whether you're a dry cleaning shop or a food truck or Berkshire Hathaway, you have to do that.
I mean, I would even go so far as to say that from a strategic planning standpoint, it's quarterly now. We need to be thinking in 3-month increments in terms of course correcting, being speculative as well. Stuart Silverman just put a little comment on Facebook, and he said, we have to rethink branding to meet the needs of this post CV world, you know, this COVID world. And, you know, I know that, and by the way, before I ask you the next question, I just wanted to share this with you as well. I saw this this little screenshot, and I had to capture it, right? Who led the digital transformation of your company? A, CEO, B, CTO, or C, COVID-19. I mean, I think that just epitomizes, right? Which is you can change yourself proactively, or you can be changed, often by something that is uncontrollable. So for me, you know, it's a clear lesser of evils. I'd rather change when I'm in control than be changed when I'm completely out of control.
Yes, and you know, if somebody's holding a gun to your head, obviously, you know, the COVID is making you change, and that's okay. You know, to recognize that there is a problem and to do something about it, but take the initiative and do the self-examination. Quarterly is fine. Starting tomorrow is even better, and not wait for the next quarter. It's really time to closely examine and try and get some objective help, because there's an awful lot of people who will, well, this is fine, we're doing fine, we don't want to risk change. Change is expensive. Rebranding can mean time and treasure and management distraction and all that. Yes, all of those problems and dangers are there. However, you know, if you have to, it's time to start now.
So there are a few things that I want to get to in the time that we have left. But the first is time, right? You said you don't have the time. I wonder if you could just comment briefly on what rebranding efforts are going to cost and how much time they're going to take. Are we going to be able to spend the money that we spent on these efforts before and take the time that we invested before? Or are we going to need to kind of really implement the better, cheaper, faster approach?
Well, obviously the scope dictates a lot of that. You have to realize that if you are making minor adjustments to your messaging and you say, hey, we're working with messages that don't seem to be as effective as they were, that's going to be a much shorter term problem than, say, there's a merger and then you've got two companies that have to come out of this with a unified. That always takes 12 to 18 months. That's a much bigger deal. But it's possible that a lot of things that you can do short of that are only going to take 4 weeks to 12 weeks, that sort of thing. And beginning with, how much time are you willing to devote to an analysis of the problem? You've got differing points of view in the C-suite and the sales department and operations, and all of these people have to be brought together in what we describe as an insight storming session, where it's a Socratic questioning of all these different people with different points of view. And then we want to make sure that there's some consensus on exactly where are we and where do we need to go, and what's the most necessary steps to take to make our brand much stronger and more relevant to our audiences.
And let this idea of making a brand stronger and more relevant. But I also think there's a new almost brand attribute that is part of brand health, and that is resilience, right? To a brand that can be resilient and resistant to a degree to some of these destructive and disruptive forces. But I wanted to ask you a quick question. You talk about 3 skills that a brand needs to master, or a brand manager needs to master. What are those 3 skills, very, very quickly? And do you see those skills changing now, kind of into and post COVID-19?
There's 3 imperatives that every brand needs to deal with, and this again is from a small local business to the lemonade stand to General Motors. The first, as always, is awareness. They have to build awareness, which is the easiest problem to solve because you can buy it. You can just spend money and get, you're running for county commissioner, you buy yard signs. AT&T wants you to think more kindly about them, they buy TV commercials. So that's easy. The second, and job number 2, is differentiation, so that you have some reason why your brand is distinctively different from every other brand. And there are many, many different ways to do that. We list in the book, we give a page each to 24 different attributes that you can use to build on to establish some differentiation. The third one, and this is where most brands fall down, is urgency. Because the differentiator that you chose might not mean anything to your audience, or it's such a cliche that everybody else is using it, and so it doesn't feel urgent. But if you choose a differentiator that's really meaningful to the audiences that you are targeting and find a way to express it in ways that are strong, then you build that urgency, then you've fulfilled your mission as a brand. Because
I have to say, I was going to say that, awareness and differentiation, I'm teaching right now at West Virginia University, and I'm going to, as soon as I have a link to the show, I'm going to go and tell my students to watch this, because this is a great masterclass on the foundations and fundamentals, right? Awareness and differentiation. And certainly we can apply an innovative spin to both of those, right? How do you, because there are different ways to get awareness without paying for it, right? I often say, don't pay for attention, pay attention. But I loved urgency, because urgency, I feel, is new and differentiated within itself. And I think brands can really learn from that. So thank you for sharing that. we're going to move over to Zoom in a couple of minutes. But you know, something I thought of today was we actually got a comment for you, a question from Larry Zwain. And so I'm going to tease that by being able to say Bob is going to address the C of candidate, you know, talking about politics and the branding and rebranding and repositioning, maybe of a candidate or two, of the whole voting and even the branding of the Electoral College versus popular vote. We can get into that on the Zoom after show. And so that's your little incentive, if you will, to come join us. And the link, of course, is above. Every day we move over to a much more intimate discussion. And yeah, it can get a bit political sometimes as well. And that's, you know, the link as well. But, you know, I want you to have the last word. I really enjoyed getting to know you, Bob. And I always like that last word before plugging, and you should plug. And I'm going to make sure that I post a link to Amazon to buy your book and provide all your social media details below, which you can see scrolling at the bottom of the screen. But my question for you, Bob, is always, you know, what advice would you give people right now that are scared, that are at home, that are, you know, laid off, brand managers, people looking to differentiate themselves, people looking to bring that urgency into their own personal brand, and of course the companies that they work for and work on? What advice would you give them during these tough, challenging times?
Well, it's perfectly okay to be scared. These are scary times. It's also perfectly okay to prepare yourself and to plan. And, you know, we're all sheltered in place. We're all staying indoors. It's a good time to rethink what it is that you need to accomplish for your organization, whether it's a company or a cause or a career or whatever. I would suggest that they read the book, and your students at West Virginia to read the book. I've taught a number of MBA classes, and I've kind of summarized a lot of what I teach into the book, so that it can be used as a business school practical textbook. It's not a textbook so much as a really handy guide with, you know, step by step.
Well, and we need guides now more than ever, and we need Sherpas. Thank you for being one of them today, Bob. The book is called Rebrand, not brand, but Rebrand, the how-to guide for the Darwinian survival of your company, candidate, college, cause, and career, the 5 C's. Bob, thank you for coming on. And for all of you that want to join us in Zoom, we'll be there for the next half an hour. Take care, everyone, and see you tomorrow on Wednesday. Bye-bye, everyone.